this computer. All right. Let's see. Dolores, I see it shows on here that your video is out, but your microphone you don't actually have. So hopefully you've got sound. If not, then I'll have this recorded and we're going to try to get it posted online somewhere so y'all can log in and use it. Hey guys, this is really kind of a simple study. As I was just explaining to Larry, Excel has a first time passing ratio based on getting through this course. Like when you jump in it, go ahead and jump in it and jump out of it to try to get it knocked out. The sooner the better, not to fly through it and not actually study it, but to actually, dive into it and, get a good grasp on it. But today, this is just going to be some of the top questions that we have seen on the test and some of the top things that is on just about every first test. There's several that will be on that first test that you can really knock a lot of those out by knowing these. If you don't pass it the first time, then they start mixing it up pretty good. You'll still see them scattered throughout the test, but this is really geared to just give you a good snapshot of what to look for. And I've got some test taking tips we're going to talk about first. So I'm going to hide a few of these things. Let's see. All right, you don't need to look at me anyway. So hopefully everybody's in here that's supposed to be in here. Ahmed finally got in. I hope everybody can hear me. Hey guys, thanks for taking time to hop on here. I'm going to just kind of go through this. I do want to stop along to answer any questions that you might have. So if I get to if I get too far ahead and forget to ask, if somebody will just, pop up unmute your mic and I say, hey, I got a question or whatever. I don't want to open it up to questions throughout the entire thing or we won't get very far. So I would say every, 15 or 20 minutes if somebody has a question, I can answer questions if I don't ask if you have questions. But the first thing here, as you can see, it just really talks about, there's at least 30 of these questions that will be on your test. So the test has changed the way they do it. I don't know if anybody has tested and knows the actual numbers, but it used to be 100 questions and they took 20 of them and they threw them out and that you had to get 56 of the remaining 80 to get a 70 or greater. I'm pretty sure, and don't hold me to this, but I'm pretty sure there's 120 questions on the test now. And I think they throw, 20 of those out and now you have to get 70 of the 80 correct. So does anybody on here, has anybody taken the test already? Does that sound right or wrong? No.
It's been about 2 months for me.
Okay. Do you remember how many was on it, Rosa?
I'm pretty sure it was still the 135 whenever I took it.
Okay. And they had that broken down how was the 135. Didn't they have a section just for laws? Like there was maybe the 35 were just laws, 100 on the life and health and 35 on laws or something?
Yes, sir. It was the last 30 was all laws.
Last 30. So 105 on the actual life and health and accident and sickness, or life, accident, sickness was 105 and then 30 on the laws. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
All right, I'm gonna write that down and make sure I add it on there. All right, so with that, guys, that's a good test taking or good information to know for taking this test. So 135 questions, 105 will be on life insurance, policies, process, underwriting, and all of that, accident and sickness, and then 30 will be just on, Georgia law. You have a section in Excel that is about Georgia law. So whenever I have people preparing for this test, there's several ways that you learn. One of the ways is you read something. Another way is by writing it. So writing things down actually helps you learn. Another way is through research. When you're researching the reading for an answer, what's crazy is you can typically pull 2 answers out of one. So if I miss a question and I go back into my study material to find it. As I'm looking for the answer to the question I missed, I will find that answer and usually an answer to another question while I'm looking for it. And then listening, of course, we have basically 5 senses. And so by hitting the hearing, the seeing, and then of course the speaking, the writing, the thinking, that's going to hit 3 of your senses like that, and it will help you learn. So this is a big deal to me. Your state test, your license, temp license is only good for 6 months. That's going to be one of your questions on there is how does the temporary license work? But I'm going to go over these test taking tips first, and then we're going to dive into the others. So this is a study guide. It's not to take the place of your Excel course or your own personal study. This is just kind of give you some big ticket items. I would go over this and over this and over this. I also recommend some of these things that are in here that you go in and actually find them because the laws do change. For example, the way that our continuing education worked 3 or 4 years ago is different than the way it works today. I try to keep this thing current, but if nobody tells me of a change, then if I don't know it, it doesn't make the change, on the study guide. So it's not 100%, or I'm not going to say it's 100%. It could be, it should be. I hope it is, but it's up to you to make sure that you find it. And please, if you find an error on this, let me know so I can make the change on here. So here's the biggest test taking tip, guys. I don't know, what number for you this would do, but I can promise you, if you look at this 4-step process that I have, this 4-step process will probably pull about 10 wrong answers. And again, if they're throwing some of these out, you got 135 on there and they're doing a certain percentage of the ones they actually grade, 10 can make a big difference. It can be the difference in a 63 and a 73 and the difference in passing and failing. So you're timed on this. And again, correct me if I'm wrong, Rose, I think you got 2 hours or 2.5 hours. Is that right to take this?
Yes, sir. I think it's about 2.5, if I'm not mistaken.
So you think, man, that's plenty of time. Well, if you're reading these and going through this process, it's not a lot of time. And that's the reason I talk about answering it and moving on. But if you think about the fact that this is designed to try to trick you, the first thing that I want you to do whenever you are taking your test is read the question and ask yourself, what is it asking you? Don't even look at the answers yet. Just read the question. Is it saying all of the following is true except? Well, it's not asking for which one is true. It's asking for which one is false or which one is wrong, right? Does it say which of the following is true? So now it's, of course, asking you for which one is right or which of the following is not true. So again, looking for the false. So they'll word it in here to try to trick you. So before you look at the answers, I always say read the question without looking at the answers and ask, what is it asking me? What answer am I looking for? Am I looking for the right answer? Am I looking for the wrong answer? So read it a second time. Number 2, make sure you're clear on what the question is asking and look at the 4 answers, but do not select one yet. So I've read it that first time. What is it asking me? I've read it a second time. I confirm that what I think it's asking me, it's actually asking me. And I look at those 4 answers and I just read through them. And even if I see the right one, guys, please don't pick it yet. Read it a 3rd time to confirm that what you think it's asking you, it's still asking you. Look at the 4 answers, eliminate 2 of them. Read it that 4th time. One more time, make sure that you know what it's asking you, because I promise you guys, it'll throw you. And make your final answer from the remaining 2. You got a 50-50 shot now. You're taking it from a 25% to a 50%. Hopefully you will know it. But once you make a selection, move on, don't come back. What happens sometimes is it'll ask you which of the following is not true. And later it will ask you which of the following is true. And you'll think back to, well, man, they asked me this one earlier and I put the wrong dang thing. No, they worded it different. Do not go back. If you'll follow this system, read it. What is it asking you? Read it again. Am I right on what it's asking me? Look at the 4. Read it again. Am I sure it's what it's asking me? Look at the 4, remove 2. Read it a final time. Make sure that's what it's asking you. Pick from the 2 and move on and never go back. Okay. How that popped up. Okay. So that's the 4-step process. Now, again, that will help you with about 10 of the questions on that test. From there, here's some of the things that we're going to talk about. First thing is grace period. So you got to understand what a grace period is, because they will trick you in the way they ask the question. They won't always say the grace period on a weekly premium policy is, and you have to pick it. No, they're going to say something like, Brian has a life insurance policy that was due for October. He forgot to pay his October payment and died November the 3rd. Is he covered? Well, understanding the grace period, if they pay their premiums weekly. Now, we don't see a lot of this anymore, and I don't even know when the last time it's been on the test, but I know it's been on the past test in the past. But anybody who pays their premiums weekly has a 7-day grace period. So that's pretty standard, right? Pays it by the week. It covers me the next week. Monthly premium, though, is where it gets a little bit confusing. So monthly is only 10 days. A lot of people think the monthly grace period is 30 days, but it's not. It's 10 days. And then all other modes is 31 days. So if they pay it quarterly, semi-annual, or once a year annually, then their grace period is 31 days. Now, what does that grace period look like? Well, the grace period is based on the due date of the policy. If they don't pay it when it's due, then how long will they still be covered? So if my premiums are due on October the 1st and I'm paying it monthly, and I don't pay it October the 1st, my grace period carries me through October the 10th. So I have a 10-day grace period. If I pay it once a year and I pay it January of every year and it's due for January, then it's basically going to carry me those 31 days in January. That's my grace period. That if I have a claim during the grace period, I'm still covered. Okay. It doesn't go out of benefit until it goes past the grace period. Now, don't get that confused with how companies pay claims, because a lot of your good companies, and ours is one of them, will pay claims even beyond a grace period. But understand, when they're asking the questions, is what does the law say? It's the same thing with the free look provision. Our free look provision that we give to our customers exceeds what the state's requirement is. But the state's requirement on a free look is you get a 10-day free look provision. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. But for a grace period, I pay my October, it's now due for November. I pay my November, it's now due for December. I don't pay my December, and if I'm paying it monthly, if I die on the 15th of December, I'm outside of my grace period, and by law, they don't have to pay the claim. Okay, so you need to understand grace periods. I would find these terms and the definitions we'll be going over today. I would find this stuff in your book. Again, there's not a whole lot here. Y'all got the pages in front of you. I'm just going to kind of skim through this one, but there's only a few things on this. Guys, if you'll take the time to go in and, look for all of these in your study material, you'll not only find, these, but in searching, you're going to find an answer to something else. So there's just not a lot here. I promise you it will help you on the test. Okay. Temporary license. This is what I started to talk about a while ago. Now, how does this temporary license work? Well, it has a maximum of 15 months, and that's in the state of Georgia. Not all states offer a temp license, and not all states are the same. But you got to know how that breaks down. So your initial temporary license is only good for 6 months. So if it asks you a question, says, Brian applied for a temporary Georgia life accident and sickness license in January. How long is his license good for? Well, it's only good for 6 months. Now, we know that it has a maximum of 15 months, but that's not the answer. Your initial temp is only 6. After that, you're eligible for 3 3-month extensions. So if I took all 3 of my 3-month extensions, that's 9 months. Plus the initial 6 months, that's where the max 15 months comes in. But it will not go beyond the 15-month window. So depending on when they got the initial temp license, well, if let's say the 6 months runs out and 2 months later, they try to do their extension, well, it's not 15 months of a temporary license being active. It's 15 months maximum for when the temp license was initially taken out. It will expire. So knowing how this works, the other thing on here is you only get 1 temporary license in your lifetime. So if somebody had a temporary license 15 years ago and wants to come into the insurance business, they cannot apply for another temporary license. They must get their permanent license. Okay. Permanent license. Well, in order to get your permanent license, as all of you know, you have to have an equivalent of a 40-hour course, either classroom or self-study. Most of y'all do online. You know, somebody's. Make sure I got everybody muted. Okay. You got to have the 40-hour course, either classroom or self-study. After that, you've got to pass the state license exam. Now, your perm license is renewed every 2 years. That is biannually. So sometimes they'll say, is your license renewed annually, semi-annually, biannually, or every 5 years? You know, something they may not put 2 years in there, but you got to know 2 years is biannually. So renewed every 2 years by the end of your birth month. So it's not necessarily December the 31st. If you're born in October, as I am, my license expired or would have expired this past October. I had to do my continuing education, which I'll talk about next, and I had to pay my renewal fee, and it's good for another 2 years. When you first get your permanent license, depending on when you pass your test and when your birth month is, it will start that coming year's birth year, and then you'll have that 2-year run. And 2 years later, you're going to have to renew your license by doing continuing education and paying your license renewal fee. So permanent license renewed every 2 years. You must pay the renewal fee. And this will be a question on your test. Have 24 hours of continuing education, with 3 of those being ethics. So how could they put that on your test? Well, they could put, you must have 24 hours and 3 hours of ethics. Well, that's not true. You got to have a total of 24 with 3 of them being ethics. Now, here's the thing. You can have 24 hours of ethics. They're okay with that. You just have to have a total of 24, and a minimum of 3 of those have to be ethics. So if you get 24 hours of life and health and no ethics, you still have to get another 3 hours of ethics. So you'd wind up with 27, and all you need is 24. But if you got 24 of ethics, you don't have to have anything else, because they just want you to get 24 hours continuing education, and 3 of the 24 being in ethics. Okay. One little thing right there at the end, we do have a little deal worked out that if they live within 25 miles of the Georgia border, then you can actually live in Florida, Alabama, Tennessee, South Carolina, which are our bordering states. And if you're within 25 miles of our border, you can get a resident Georgia license. Now, it's a lot more in depth because it has to go through a separate approval process in the state. But that question could be on your test. If they're in a bordering state and they're within 25 miles of the Georgia line, they would be eligible for a resident Georgia license. I'm gonna hit the non-res real quick, and then I'll see if anybody's got any questions. A non-resident, well, that's exactly what it sounds like. It means you get a license in a state as a non-resident. So I am a Florida resident. I have a Florida perm license, but then I have a Georgia non-res, South Carolina non-res, Alabama non-res, Colorado non-res. We got some accounts that have some locations outside of the area. You're not allowed to do business, solicit, sell, present, no talking about insurance in a state unless you are licensed. So if you're living in Georgia and you're working Florida, you cannot get a non-res license on your temp license. If you look, the first thing there, a person may obtain a non-resident license in Georgia, provided they have a valid resident license in their own state. You can only obtain the same type of license. So if you have a Florida resident life, you can only get a Georgia non-resident life. You can't get a Georgia non-resident property and casualty, P&C. If you have a Florida resident health, you can't come in and get a Georgia resident life. And so with that, whatever license you hold in a state as your perm license, your resident license, you can get a non-res in another state of the same license type. So being a Georgia resident, you can get a license, a non-res in another state. But remember this, because the test is about Georgia, it's talking about how to obtain a Georgia non-res if you're licensed in another state. So if you're licensed, if you live in Florida and you got a Florida res permanent license, then you can get a Georgia non-res of the same type. You don't have to be fingerprinted. You just have to fill out an application and pay the license fee. And you don't have to do the CE. Your CE is only on your resident license. So when you're doing continuing education, that is to renew your resident license. And as long as your resident license is active, then you can get a non-resident license in another state, or outside, you can get a non-resident license in Georgia, as long as your resident license in another state is active. Okay. Any questions about what I've started with on this, the test taking tips, the grace period, the temp license, perm license, and non-resident license?
No, sir, I'm okay.
Actually, I have a question, Brian.
Okay.
So if I have a Georgia permanent license, would I be able to go, like, say, to Indiana and get one as long as I apply for the non-resident?
So if you have a Georgia resident license,
Mhm.
every state that we've ever applied, I don't know of a state out there that won't allow you to get a non-resident in their state. Now, that's not going to be on your test because it's talking about the Georgia non-resident. So you have to have a resident license in Indiana to get a Georgia non-resident, right?
Yeah.
And to your question, a Liberty rule is they have us locked into the states that we can actually serve. So they don't let us just get a license in any state to go out there and sell our family and friends. And they may get good service, they may not. They want to have a servicing rep in the area. So to answer your question based on what the law allows, yes. But if you're asking because you know people in Indiana, then that's probably not going to happen.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions about the Georgia test and the grace periods or the licensing on the temp, the perm, and the non-res Georgia license? Okay, moving right along. Next page. All right, so it says, this is just a little tip, and it's on a lot of the tests, but you must notify the state in writing within 30 days of a name or an address change. So if you get married, if you get divorced, anytime you have a name change, the state does want you to notify them within 30 days. From there, I just separated mine because it doesn't really go with license revocation. But if your license is revoked for cause, whatever reason it is, maybe you, when you're doing your license renewal, you still have to answer some questions. Have you been arrested for anything since obtaining your license? Now, anything that you had before your license and they issued the license, you don't have to send to them again. But since the issuing of your license or since your last renewal, have you been arrested for anything? Well, let's just say you're arrested for theft or something. Well, the state could revoke your license because we fall under the financial services division of each state, i.e. the state of Georgia. If you have theft, embezzlement, something like that, anything that's irresponsible fiduciarily, then they could revoke your license. But I can tell you something like misappropriating funds for a customer, forgery, anything that you did that was for cause, you can't even reapply for 5 years. So if they revoke your license for cause, you got to wait 5 years to reapply. I alluded to this one earlier, free look provision. So understanding how the free look provision works and when it starts, okay? You need to put a little star beside that because I don't have it written here and I don't want to give you the wrong information. But if you deliver a policy, hand deliverment, guys, years ago, we hand delivered every policy and they had to sign off on the date they received it because life insurance has a 10-day free look provision. And life insurance, that also includes your supplemental health. So if you're offering a cancer policy, if you're offering intensive care, stuff like that, any of our ancillary products and our life insurance has a 10-day free look provision by the state of Georgia. As I said, we offer them more than that, but they said you can't offer less than that. And I'm not going to tell you about ours, so I don't want to confuse you. What you need to know is what I have in bold print. Life insurance has a 10-day free look provision. A Medicare supplement and long-term care has a 30-day free look provision. And a variable product, which means investing in the stock market, has a 45-day free look provision. So what does a free look provision mean? Well, I buy a policy from somebody. I have 10, 30, or 45 days to review that policy to make sure that what I thought they said it did, it actually does. And if I change my mind in my 10, 30, or 45-day window, I can cancel it for a full refund. They take it off as if it was never issued. So 10 days on the life insurance, 30 days on med subs and long-term care, and 45 days on any kind of variable product. And a variable product is when they invest in the stock market. We're going to talk about that a little bit more later, but the variable product is a product that is actually investing in the stock market. And the way I look at this is the simpler the policy, the shorter the free look provision time that you have. I mean, life insurance is pretty cut and dry. Is it term? Is it whole life? How long is it going to last? What do the provisions do? Med subs, long-term care, that is complex. And dude, when you get into variables, it is complex, you know, so 10, 30, and 45 days. But please, please, please look up when does it start. So I know it starts when you hand deliver it, but a lot of policies today are mailed. I'm pretty sure the date starts when it's postmarked, but I don't know that they're not going to change that, because sometimes it takes mail longer than that to get to somebody's house, especially nowadays, you know, so they may have changed that, but just verify when does it start, especially if the policy is mailed to their home. Insurance commissioner. Two things you got to know here. Number one, the insurance commissioner is elected every 4 years. So it's just like the president. People run for the position of insurance commissioner. They're voted on by the people, and they're elected every 4 years. And that's on a lot of your insurance tests. Claims. So when we get into processing of claims, you need to know the different dates and time periods for filing a claim, what responsibility the insured has, and what responsibility the company has. So example here, the insured is supposed to notify the company within 20 days of a loss. So remember, we're talking about life, accident, sickness. This isn't home or auto. This is life, accident, sickness. So if there is, somebody passes, well, I'm supposed to notify the company within 20 days. If somebody's diagnosed with cancer, I'm supposed to notify the company within 20 days of the loss. And provide proof of loss within 90 days of that notification. And then the company's responsibility is, once they've received everything that they need to determine whether the claim is covered or not, they're supposed to pay the claim immediately or within 60 days of an investigated loss. Now, guys, it's a lot more complex than this, and I haven't taken the time to go into the material to write more down. But I know that sometimes when additional information is requested, then the insured gets additional number of days to respond. And when they respond, the company has a certain number of days when they have to reply and either give an answer or a request for more information. So in filing claims, just knowing kind of the process based on the time periods and whose responsibility is what. Legal age to purchase insurance in the state of Georgia is 15. So a 15-year-old can sign their own application in the state of Georgia to be the applicant on a life policy or health policy. So 15 and older is the legal age in the state of Georgia. Disability insurance. So just some fun facts on this. If your disability income is paid by, if the premiums for your disability income is paid by your employer, or if the employee pays it on a pre-tax basis, the income is then taxable. So let's just say that I have $1,000 a month disability income and I'm paying $10 a week for it and they're pre-taxing it. So, of course, I save some tax dollars every month on my premium. Well, if I become disabled because I got the tax break on the premium, my $1,000 a month now becomes taxable income. If you pay it with post-tax premium, then the disability income is not taxable to the employee. Same thing for the employer. If the employer is paying the premium, then they're getting it as a write-off. It's a benefit. So if I work for, XYZ company and they provide a disability plan for me and I'm not having I have no premiums in it. If I become disabled, then my income is taxable to me, the employee. So also the insured's income determines the benefit for disability insurance. You can't be making $50,000 a year and go out there and get $50,000 a month of coverage and then get disabled, think it's going to start paying you $50,000 a month. So typically it's somewhere in the 60% of your income is what disability insurance usually covers. So if you're making $2,000 a month, then you can typically get up to $1,200. But I don't know if that is a max allowed by the state. So that's one of those things that when you're studying disability, just see if it tells you if there's a maximum percentage of your income that you can actually cover through disability insurance. While we are talking about this, disability insurance is different from workers' compensation. So don't get those confused. I don't think workers' comp will be on there because that would be a property and casualty product of PNC. But if they write something in there, because again, sometimes they'll try to trick you and they'll say, hey, blah, 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 he's disabled, became disabled and he was paying a premium. Or what would he be covering? His disability policy, his workers' comp, his cancer insurance, or his life insurance. You're going to know it's his disability insurance. So don't let them put something in there that is a familiar term to you, but doesn't make sense. And Rosa can attest to, she says she took it a couple months ago. She can tell you guys that it definitely puts stuff on there that you're like, oh, well, that's probably right because you're familiar with the term and it ain't got nothing to do with what they are testing you on, which is why I said in the beginning, read the question. What is it asking me? Read it a second time, look at the 4 answers. Read it a third time, eliminate 2. Read it a fourth time, pick one of the 2, move on and never go back. So waiting periods and elimination periods. Now this is primarily found in disability insurance. There are some health policies that have some waiting periods and elimination, but once you understand it, it would be the same for all. But the number one place that you see these 2 things is in a disability plan. So 2 big terms on disability. What is the waiting period? Well, it's how long you wait before the coverage goes into effect. Our cancer policy has a 30-day waiting period. Our critical illness policy has a 30-day waiting period. So all that says is you can't buy it from me, run out there and get tested tomorrow and find out that you've got cancer or heart issues or whatever within that 30-day window and us pay a claim. It has a 30-day waiting period, so you have to wait before it's in effect. Elimination period is the amount of days that you have to eliminate before it starts actually paying benefits. So again, on disability, I get hurt at XYZ company. I have a 10-day elimination period. Well, the first 10 days, it's not going to pay anything. And then beginning my 11th day and beyond, it'll start paying my weekly or my monthly disability benefit. Most of your disabilities are going to have like a 7-day, a 14-day. Well, back up. It could have a 0. There are some policies that your disability benefit starts day 1. But think of this. A lot of times I'll ask you a question on what has the highest premium. Well, who determines the premium? Well, the insurance company. Well, why do they determine the premium? Well, the premium has to be so they can pay claims and make a profit. So we got commissions that come out of the premium, and they got claims that come out of the premium, and they have to return a profit to the stockholders. So when the company is at a higher risk, the premium is going to cost more. And that's really, guys, with all products that are out there. So when you talk about a disability plan that has a 0-day elimination starts day one, well, you can bet the premium is going to cost more than a guy who has a 30-day elimination period, because a lot of people that go out with maybe they're out with a sickness or an accident, most of those are within that 30-day window. Some will go a 6-week, maybe an 8, but you think about that. 8 weeks is basically 2 months. Well, if I got a 30-day elimination period, it covers nothing for the first 30. They're only going to have a 2-week or a 4-week actual benefit payout, because you're not paid back for that elimination period. Those days have to pass before benefits actually begin. So it's not just, I got on here that they're paid. I think I'm going to change that from paid to begin. If you've got your paper, the elimination period is the amount of time you got to wait after loss before the benefits begin. I got far. So waiting period is how long you wait before it goes into full effect. Elimination period is after a loss, how much time has to surpass before the benefits begin. Let's go back. There are some disabilities, guys, that have a 30, a 60, and even a 90-day elimination period. Go back to the exposure of the company. What's going to be the most expensive to the customer if it has a 30, 60, or 90-day option? Which one would cost them the most? Somebody? Anybody? Got to unmute. Got an option for a 30, 60, and 90-day elimination period. What's going to cost them the most? The 30 option, the 60 option, or the 90 option? Anybody unmuting?
Wouldn't it be the 30?
It would be the 30, because the company's got the greatest risk, right? And I'm going to
Mhm.
carry that over. And I think we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but let's talk about deductibles on health insurance, because they'll ask you about premiums. So if a customer has an option for a $250 deductible or a $2,500 deductible, which one is going to cost the customer the most? Larry, you're still unmuted. You know that one too?
Repeat it again.
On a major medical plan, if I'm buying Blue Cross and Blue Shield, United, or whatever, and I'm given my deductible options. So deductible is what I have to pay out of pocket before they pay. And I can get a $250 or a $2,500. Which one would cost me more, the $250 or the $2,500? Which one's going to
Would it be the
expose the
2,500?
company? Which one's going to expose the company more? So if my deductible is $250, after I pay $250, they pick it up. Or after I pay $2,500, they pick it up. Where's the company got the exposure?
2,500.
$250. Think about that now. It's going to cost me more to have a lower deductible because the company's exposed to more, right?
Mhm.
If I have a $250 deductible, they start paying at $251. But if I've got a $2,500 deductible, they don't start paying until $2,501. So there's another $2,250 they're going to get out of me before they have to pay anything. You follow me? So
Yeah, I
that's
get
how y'all have to look at this, guys. Y'all have to look at it from the insurance company's perspective. Where do they have the greatest exposure? If they ask you about premium, what's going to cost a customer more? A 10-year term, a 20-year term, or a 30-year term? Well, we know if it's locked in for 30 years, that's going to be the most expensive, because today I buy it at 20, but at 49, I'm paying the same rate. Well, they're not going to charge me a 20-year-old rate at 49, 29 years later. But if I get a 10-year term, in 10 years, it's going to go up on me. So the 10-year term would be less expensive and go up in 10 years. The 30-year term, which exposes the company to more because they're now covering them for 30 years. That's 20 years of an older age, which, with age, claim risk goes up, right? So more exposure to the company. When they start asking you questions about which one is going to cost more or which one is going to cost less, you have to look at it from the company's perspective. Where do they have the greatest exposure, and make your selection from that. All right. So back to the worksheet, the elimination periods, the longer the elimination period, the lower the premium. The longer the waiting period, the lower the premium, because again, it's less exposure for the company. Contestable period. We talked earlier about the free look provision being 10 days for life insurance, 30 days for your med subs and your long-term care, and 45 days for your variable products. But your contestable period is how long the policy is in force. that the policy is no longer contested. So the contestable period is 2 years from the date of issue. So if I bought a policy January 1, 2023, then all the way through January 1 of 2025, my policy is what's called contestable. Now, all that does is that protects the insurance company from people qualifying under a false pretense, and fancy word for saying lying. So we rely on the customer to tell the truth. We rely on the agent to represent us, the company, because you are a representative of the company. We're paying you to represent us. We're relying on technology today to be able to find out when people are not telling the truth. So we pull script checks, we pull medical records. There's a lot of things that we have access to help with the underwriting. But guys, even with all these things, stuff slips through the cracks. I can give you an example of a guy who had a heart attack several years ago. And I was actually an agency director, and I carried an agent to the field. They called the office, wanting to buy some life insurance. And we went out and we wrote him life insurance. We sat at the table, we asked him the questions. When it was asked, have you had any, disease or disorder of the heart or circulatory system, including high blood pressure, stroke? He sat right there and said no. And we issued the policy. The company did their due diligence, issued the policy. And about 18 months later, he died, and we denied the claim, and the family was all up in arms. Well, luckily, we do those recorded phone interviews, the quality assurance call, the quack call. Part of that is to protect us, the company. Part of it is also to protect you. And luckily, he had lied on the quack call too, because they're like, Daddy would have never lied, blah, 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 blah. But because he had just had the heart attack wasn't in the medical records yet. And there was nothing out there for us to find. We took it in good faith that he was telling the truth. He didn't look unhealthy. I mean, you can't really tell somebody just had a heart attack. They're out of the hospital now. I don't know what he looked like before he went in. So he looked fine. He talked, he sat there. I mean, no issues, right? Well, luckily we had that recorded phone interview where he even lied on the recorded call, and we denied the claim. So it's only to protect the company from people qualifying under false pretense. Let's take a similar scenario. Let's say the guy buys a life policy from you and 2 weeks later has a heart attack and 6 months later dies. Well, the policy is still contested. But as long as he didn't have like heart issues before where he lied on the application, it doesn't matter what happens after the policy issues. It's what happened before. You qualify at the time of application. And once you qualify, we're not going to take it away from you. So you have a life insurance policy and 2 years later, you have a heart attack. Well, we're not going to take it from you 5 years later, whatever. But at the same time, the contestable period is only 2 years. So if you're sitting down with a customer and they lie to you, they tell you that they're, you can look at me and those of you that have met me and seen me, if I told you I'm 6'2", 150, you better tell the company, I don't think that guy's 150. I mean, maybe his left leg, but he ain't no 150 pounds. And there is a height and weight chart. And guys, you cannot fudge on that. When you get in there and you look at that height and weight chart and it says somebody 6 feet tall can weigh 300 pounds and he tells you he's 310. Well, let me tell you, if he tells you he's 310, he's probably 311, but you can't get him in there at 310 and say, well, you're only eligible up to 300. Now, when's the last time you weighed? I mean, do you think you might be 299? Because I'm telling you, if that guy dies in 2 years and we pull medical records, and we will, and his doctor says, man, he was just in my office 3 months early and I've been telling him for 5 years to lose weight. The guy was 350 pounds. We're not going to pay the claim. And pardon my English, but you screwed that family. That's not right. And that's the reason I always say do it with integrity, because if this guy's paying for this insurance for the next 12, 18, 24 months, and you fudge something to get him approved and he dies and we don't pay a claim, you did that family a disservice. So please, please, please make sure you always do our business with integrity, okay? From there, somebody could lie to you today and be like eat up with health issues. And if we don't catch it, and that son of a gun lives 2 years and 1 day, we cannot contest it. We pay full face amount. So the 2-year contestable period really protects us for a short window. There's a lot of people through the years that I have done policy reviews on that got a policy in force and happened to live past the 2-year contestable period. Now, once it's past the contestable period, there's not much I can do about it. I mean, I'm not going to, say, hey, company, they lied 5 years ago, because they can't do nothing about it, right? The contestable period is only 2 years. Suicide clause, it falls under that same 2-year period. A lot of people think that life insurance will not cover suicide. Well, it won't for the first 2 years. Why do we do that? Well, somebody's typically that's thinking about suicide, they don't think about it for 2 years. This is to protect us from the guy who is healthy, but then he buys that life policy and decides that this world's not worth living anymore, and goes out and 3 months later, 6 months later, commits suicide. A lot of times, if they buy life insurance and know that it won't pay for suicide, they'll try to make it look like it wasn't suicide. Now, it's on the burden of proof is on the insurance company if they think it's foul play or that it was suicide. Besides that, if they can't prove it's suicide and he was insurable at the time of application, we have to pay it. Hey, back to the contestable period. That doesn't mean we won't pay a policy if they die in 2 years. We just won't pay it if they die in 2 years if they were uninsurable at the time of application. So you got a perfectly healthy guy that comes in and buys a policy. My stepbrother died at 33 years of age. A heart attack's the only one he ever had. And it just happened to be the one that got him, 33. Well, had he bought a life insurance policy 6 months earlier in good health, and it issued and he died 6 months later from a heart attack, they would have paid the claim. So they're not uninsured for 2 years. It just says we're going to check the validity of the policy to make sure that they were insurable at the time of application. And if they were, we pay the claim. And if they weren't, we deny it. Same thing with suicide. It's got a 2-year contestable, but suicide will never pay accidental death. That's not accidental. So if only the life benefit will pay for suicide, accidental death does not pay, even if it's outside of the 2-year contestable period. Medicare, we talked about this a little bit earlier. Medicare is designed for people who are 65 and older. Medicare comes automatic when you quote unquote hit that retirement age and receiving your Social Security benefit. Now, of course, that will change eventually. Please, please, please go into your book and make sure it still says 65, because I know they have tried for years to move that age to 67. If the age is 67, they will eventually change our answer on your test, and you better believe they'll want to make sure you know it. They'll say, if it's 67, they'll go, what if he's 60, 65, 67, or 70? And you better know what the actual study material says. So the last time I checked a few years ago, I think I revised this in 2020, it was still 65 and older. There's 2 parts to Medicare, and you have to know these, Part A and Part B. Part A has no cost, and Part A is for your doctors. Part B does have a cost, and Part B is for your hospitalization and all. So little note right there, Medicare does not pay 100% of the hospital and doctor bills. There's always something out of pocket, which is why people sell Medicare supplements. I don't know that they get into the specifics of Medicare. If it's in your book, you'll want to know some of these things. My information, guys, is so far outdated. I know it's wrong, but used to Part A, you had like $100 per year deductible. It's probably 150, and one y'all may already know what it is, but you need to know what that Part A deductible is. So even with Medicare, if you go to the doctor, you have to pay the first $100 of your doctor's visits that year, and then it picks it up. If you've got a Medicare supplement, most of them will pay that Part A deductible. Part B, as I said, is hospitalization, and your hospital confinements have deductibles also. So you got to know how what Medicare is and how the supplements work. These supplements, which is like health insurance, it covers the cost or some of the cost that Medicare doesn't pay. So both Part A and Part B have a deductible, but when you become eligible for Medicare, you automatically get Part A. There's no cost, but you have to pay for Part B. And if you want a supplement, you have to pay for a Medicare supplement. Now, you need to understand the difference in Medicare and Medicaid. I don't know that there'll be a lot of questions on there about Medicaid, but Medicaid is for people who are financially below what they consider to be, I don't know the word they use. There's a word they use for where that threshold is.
Lower income.
Low income.
Lower income. I had that one this
Lower
morning on my
income.
practice.
Okay, so if they're considered lower income, they get Medicaid, not Medicare. And if you're 65 or older, remember, Medicare, you get automatically. So you can, if you're older, have Medicare and Medicaid. And if you have Medicaid, basically the way it works is it picks up the expenses that are left outstanding. And it could pick up 100% of your expenses, if you don't have any coverage. So for somebody who has Medicare, Medicare would pay first, Medicaid would pay second. But if you have Medicaid, you really don't have a need for like a cancer policy. You don't have a need for any kind of health product. So like a critical illness, these other things. If you have Medicaid, anything that pays hospitalization benefits, you won't actually have a need of it because Medicaid pays 100%. But I will tell you, people sometimes are on Medicaid temporarily. And if they are, you can make it available to them, not necessarily to cover them today, but to get the waiting period out of the way. Plus, if they're diagnosed while they're on Medicaid. I had a cousin who was going to college, and while she was in college, she was a single mom. She got Medicaid, and she had Medicaid her last year. And she went ahead and got a cancer policy because it actually runs in our family. Luckily, she wasn't diagnosed, but the thought behind it was if she was diagnosed with cancer while she's on Medicaid and got her nursing degree and later came off Medicaid, which today she's actually a nurse practitioner, so she doesn't get Medicaid. Well, had she gotten cancer while she was on Medicaid, she couldn't later get a cancer policy because she'd already had cancer. So for her, knowing it runs in our family, she wanted to go ahead and get it just to be on the safe side. She could afford it, so she did. But she understood while she was on Medicaid, Medicaid pays with whatever bills are left outstanding. So if they have a cancer policy and Medicaid, the cancer policy by law has to pay the hospital, and then Medicaid pays the balance. If they have Medicaid, they cannot get benefits paid from a supplemental plan that pays directly to them. So those little detour on the Medicare, just know the difference between Medicare and Medicaid. Medicaid is for somebody who is considered lower income. Medicare is for people 65 and older. You automatically get Part A at no cost. Part B does have a cost, and you would have a need for a Medicare supplement to help cover the things that Medicare does not pay. One more thing down there, the last little, it's not a whole sentence, but the last little statement, if you become eligible for Social Security Disability Income, so SSI, 40-year-old becomes paralyzed and can't work anymore, they get Social Security Disability Income, SSI. After 24 months of disability, you become eligible for Medicare. So it's designed for people 65 or older, but as long as you're paying Social Security, you become eligible for Social Security benefits. Anybody who underage becomes disabled and they go on SSI, you are now eligible for Medicare, even if you're not 65, if you've been disabled for 24 months. And that could be on your test. You got to just make sure that you know how that works. Couple more right here on this page, and then I'll see if there's any questions. A 401k, these are some really big dates to remember. You cannot take money, well, back up. If you take money from your 401k before age 59 and a half, you'll pay a 10% early withdrawal penalty. So I'm not going to say you can't take a withdrawal, because you could. I could take a withdrawal from my 401k today. When I take it out of my 401k, y'all know that's a type of retirement income that you should be putting money into with pre-tax dollars. So it's non-taxed income, and you're investing it, or somebody's investing it for you to grow. So if I'm putting in $1,000 a month, 12,000 a year that I haven't paid taxes on, and it grows, 10 years, I put 120,000, it grows to 200,000. Well, all 200,000 is taxable because I did not pay taxes on my $1,000 a month. Neither did I pay taxes on that $80,000 worth of growth. So the entire 401k benefit, when I withdraw it later, is taxable at my then taxable rate. So let's say today that I'm at a 30% tax bracket and I want to pull out of my 401k, well, I'm going to pay my 30% tax plus a 10% penalty. I'm going to pay 40% of the money that comes out if it's taken out before 59 and a half. Now at 59 and a half, I can take it at today's tax rate, but I don't pay the additional 10% early withdrawal penalty. From there, 59.5 is the earliest you can take it without penalty, and you're required to start a withdrawal from it by 70.5. So guys, those are on your test. You've got to know those dates. 59.5, anything before that's a 10% penalty. 70.5, you're required to start withdrawal out of it. And because it's paid with pre-tax dollars and it has growth, everything that you take out is taxable at your tax rate, which is why most people put into a 401k to supplement Social Security later. So by then your income drops. So when you take it out, I may be at a 30% tax bracket today. So I'm saving 30% on my investment. But when I withdraw it later, I may only pay a 12 or a 20% tax on it. So I've kind of almost like made additional money on it by paying less taxes on it. So it's a really good program, to be in, just understanding how the laws were going. And then advertising, last thing on this page. If a company pays an individual for an endorsement, then it must say this is a paid endorsement. So y'all see a lot of stuff on there. Aflac pushes Deion Sanders and I forget Nick Saban. So you see them on their commercials. Well, they have to put on there, it's a paid endorsement, or somebody that is given a testimony or something, they have to say this is a paid testimonial or whatever. In advertisement, they have to put that it is a paid endorsement or a paid testimony. So 2 pages down, an hour in. Any questions on what we've just talked about? Free look, insurance commissioner, claims, disability, waiting versus elimination, contestable, suicide, Medicare, 401k, or advertising. Going once, going twice. I'm either doing really good or y'all are asleep or you're shy. Dolores, I'm glad I can see your camera and your smile. You make me happy because Rose is not smiling. I don't know if Rose is smiling. I know Larry and Lentriel are riding with Dara. They're scared to death. So I don't want to see their face because she's a bad out of what. But Rosa, do you have a question?
No, sir, but can I add something with the Medicare?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
I know on the test, the actual state exam, it does ask what does Part A pay for, or what does Part A do, and what does Part B do?
Okay. So Part A, as I said, covers doctor's offices, doctor's visits. Part B is like your hospitalization. So maybe I need to put that in my notes, huh? Part A covers doctor visits and has no cost. Part B covers hospital and does have a cost. Rose, I know you just studied this, so it's been a long time since I've done Medicare supplements, but that's my old memory right there. But is that kind of how it's worded in there, that Part A is for the doctors and Part B is for the hospital?
Yes, sir. On the answers, they'll have like Part A with the semicolons, and they'll say doctors, and then Part B would be like hospitals. Then they'll be like flip-flopped.
Okay. All right. So just basically knowing, guys, that Part A is the doctor and Part B is the hospital. Thank you for that, Rosa. Anything else that I've talked about that you remember from the test that would help not only this group, but also any group going forward?
Oh, and another thing with Medicare is if they have Part A and Part B, they do qualify for the supplements because it asks that too.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good point. So in order to get a Medicare supplement, you have to have Part A and Part B. You cannot get Part A, you automatically get. But Part B, like I said, does have a cost. Let's see. Therefore, there is a need for Medicare supplement. Let's see. You must have both Part A and B to purchase a Medicare supplement. Okay. Anything else on that, Rosa? Has anybody else on here taken the test? Or man, I would love feedback from what you're seeing on the test. Oh, Alice, I see you down there now. Yeah, girl, you give me that smile up there in Augusta, Georgia. Has anybody else taken the test or anything that's like stood out to y'all based on what we talked about thus far that would help the group? No? All right. Moving on to the next page. Life insurance premiums. So life insurance premiums are not tax deductible, and the benefits are received tax-free. So this is big because I can tell you they have tried and tried and tried to change the law to tax the proceeds on life insurance. And I can remember them, you know, I gave money years ago whenever they were raising money to fight to keep it. It's one of the last dollars that can be received tax-free. I mean, if you transfer property, if you transfer wealth or anything else outside of a transference to a spouse, there's an estate tax that's paid, and I won't bog y'all down with it, but life insurance is still paid out benefit-wise, tax-free. So at somebody's death, if they got a $250,000 policy, that family receives $250,000 and they do not pay taxes on it. Hallelujah. Now, from there, the only time you can actually tax deduct your premiums or pre-tax your premiums is, as y'all know, in worksite. You can offer a qualified group term. Qualified means it has to be approved by ERISA, which is the Employee Retirement ERISA something supplement act or whatever, but it has to be applied, that has to be approved by ERISA, and you can pre-tax up to $50,000 worth of coverage. So you can buy, you know, 150,000, but only the first 50 can be pre-taxed. So the government will allow, through an employer, a qualified group term to be paid with pre-tax or untaxed dollars, and the benefit is still received tax-free. So even if you pre-tax the premiums through work, the $50,000 is still paid out tax-free. That is huge. All right, we'll get into some terms. And again, I just want to reiterate what I said earlier. Please, guys, take the time to look these up, write it down the way that it is in your material. I've written several of them right here, and I just happen to know the definition on several of these others. But I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. About 35, between 35 and 40, like terms or just bullet points here. And some of them compare a couple of different terms, but you're going to need to know these things. And I'm telling you, just about every test is going to have this rebating, twisting, defamation is going to be on it. You've got to know it. But rebating. So rebating is when you give a gift that's $25 or greater as an incentive for somebody to buy. So for example, I go out and say, hey, if you buy insurance from me, I'll give you a $50 gift card to the local steakhouse. That's rebating. If you entice somebody when you're sitting with them, now that's in advertising, but if you entice somebody when you're sitting with them, well, hey, if you buy it from me, I'm gonna give you, you know, $100 for buying this. You know, you give me this, you buy this $100 a month from me, and I'll give you $100. That's rebating. It's illegal. You cannot rebate. Now, you can do drawings and stuff like that. If I said, hey, anybody who sits down with me, whether you buy or not, will be eligible for a drawing for this TV. You can do that. That's not rebating. It's when you entice somebody to buy with a gift, $25 or more, Starbucks, cars, steakhouse, whatever it is. So just understand how rebating works. In fact, it's illegal twisting. Pretty self-explanatory. It's where you twist the facts of a product. So I may tell you that this policy actually pays more than what it really does, or I could sell you a group term and tell you it builds cash value, or I could sell you a mortgage policy and tell you that it's a whole life. Like if I'm twisting the facts in the policy, that's illegal, which we would think that you would know that, but you got to know the terminology is twisting. You're basically twisting the facts of the policy in a way that's not, you know, not truthful. It's harmful to the customer. Defamation, y'all probably know what that is. That's when you talk bad about another product or another company, basically twisting their information. So now you go in and you say, oh, well, this other company, they don't cover something that they actually cover. If you're lying, now if you're talking about, how ours compares to another company, and the specifics based on the policies that you've seen, that's not defamation. But if you go in and just say that Allstate, hey, yeah, they've got this life insurance policy, but I'm gonna tell you that it's going to run out in 10 years, and there's not a no renewability option in it. That's defamation. That's lying, and that's to company, to product, and to agent. You've heard defamation of character before, but anytime that you're saying something that is false to hurt the company or the agent, that's considered defamation, and it's illegal. Insuring clause. Now, there's several sections in your insurance policy. I do recommend going in, because it's going to ask you on your life insurance, what are the different sections of a life policy, and on your health insurance, what are the different sections, and you'll have the cover page, the insuring clause, the definitions. There'll be several different benefits. There'll be several different sections to the policy. Guys, they will ask you those things on the test, so you want to make sure that you dive into the material, find it, write it down. Again, write it down. By writing it, it will help you learn it. Rated policy. Our group term life is either issued or declined. It's not rated, but a lot of companies, and even like on our individual side, let's say somebody is not in the best of health, but they're not uninsurable. Well, then what we'll do is we will rate their policy. So if they're buying, just say, $100,000 plan from you, and the healthy person pays $50 a month for it, and this person happens to have high blood pressure that's uncontrolled, they may give them a table B, C, D, E rating. And instead of paying $50 a month, it might cost them $75, or it might cost them $100, or it might cost them $150. That's kind of a part of the offer and acceptance. So offer and acceptance is how insurance works. So when you take an application, that's you representing the company, taking it out on behalf of that applicant in front of you and saying, hey, company, Brian is willing to give you $50 a month for that $100,000 worth of coverage. So that's y'all's offer to the company. Well, the company says, well, he's not in great health. We will counter offer, and we will offer you that same $100,000 for $100 a month. And then I have the option to accept that. Now, there's not much of a counter from that other than, well, what will my $50,000 get me? They'll come back and say, well, $50,000, your $50 is going to get you $50,000, not $100. But it's kind of an offer and acceptance. But a rated policy is when somebody is not in great health, but also not uninsurable. So we rate the policy. Something else, I don't know if I have that on here. There's also some, not just necessarily a rating, but you may have somebody who has, like they are, they do skydiving, they work at a skydiving facility. I know there's a skydiving training school down in like Orlando or Tampa or something. So my job is skydiver instructor. Well, guess what? I'm a pretty high risk. The guy that paints water towers, the guy that does underwater welding, the guy that is deactivates bombs. I mean, like these guys are in, high risk professions. They can rate a high risk policy. They can also put an exclusion in that policy. So when you're looking these things up, as a matter of fact, I think I'm going to add that in here. There are exclusions. And I know that because I hired a guy. I wrote a guy some insurance. Did I spell it right? Exclusion. I wrote a guy insurance one time that was getting his pilot license. He was a student. Well, we still issued his life insurance. They rated the policy for 3 years. It had a 3-year rating on it. This is crazy, right? And they excluded that if he was the pilot, that the life insurance policy would not pay. Now, we know accidental death doesn't pay if you're the pilot. So if you're a pilot or a member of the crew, if that's your job, the life insurance pays, but the accidental death does not. But this policy actually excluded him being a pilot. So not only was accidental death not covered, but neither was if he was killed flying, and he was going to pay more for it for 3 years. So crazy thing, huh? A corridor deductible. So this is on your medical insurance. So I talked a little bit earlier about deductibles. You know, the guy that had a $250 deductible is going to pay more than the guy that had the $2,500 deductible. Why? Because the company is exposed to more risk. Think about this. If you've only got a $250 deductible and you twist your ankle, you know that doggone hospital bill is going to be, you know, 1,000, 2,000, whatever. You don't mind spending $250 because remember, your deductible on your medical insurance is annual. It's an annual deductible. So shoot, in January, I twist my ankle. I go up there to the doggone hospital, get seen. The bill's 2,000. I pay my $250 deductible, and everything that happens the rest of this year, my deductible is met. A lot of exposure to the company. That's why when there's a higher deductible, I'm like, well, shoot, I don't know if I'll have $2,500 worth of claims this year. I don't know that I want to go to the doctor right now with a little twisted ankle. Let me see how it pans out. So that's your deductible. It says typically what you pay before the insurance, your health insurance pays out. A corridor deductible is a little bit different. A corridor, I want you to think of what a corridor is. A corridor has to run between two things. So a hallway is considered a corridor. You got rooms on the left, you've got rooms, on the right. Something that runs between, even a wall on the left and a wall on your right? It's making a corridor. Well, a corridor deductible says your deductible sits in that corridor. So the way it works is the insurance company is going to pay the first $250 or $500. Then you're going to pay your corridor deductible. Then they're going to pick it up again. So basically, it's your deductible sitting between them paying out for your claim. It's a corridor deductible. I've not seen a company with this in years and years and years. It was popular years ago when deductibles were a lot less. And again, from a company standpoint, they were willing to pay a little bit up front and then make that deductible come in, secondary. But it has been on the test in the last few years, so we leave it on here just in case you run across it. It's the deductible sits in the corridor between money that the insurance company pays out. Typically, a deductible is first dollar on the insured's part, and then the company picks it up after that. But a corridor deductible is first dollar on the insurance company, then the insured or the patient, and then the company picks it up again. It sits between the company's payout. Insurance, when they define insurance, it is simply transference of risk. If you see that on your test, guys, it's transference of risk. That's all insurance is. At my death, I want my family to get life insurance proceeds. I'm transferring the risk of me dying and my family having a bill, funeral bill, or having to live without my income or a house payment or whatever I'm buying it for. I'm transferring that risk. I'm going to pay $50, $75, $100 a month to transfer that risk from my family having to carry that burden to now the insurance company carrying $50, $100, $250,000 of that burden. And term insurance is defined as pure insurance. Term insurance starts with a T and it's temporary. We're going to talk a little bit about whole life. But guys, you have two main types of insurance. You have term and you have whole life. Let me see if I actually put everything about the life insurance up here and give you a chance to ask any questions about it. Conversion would be good. Bear with me a second. I just want to get while I'm in here. So there's two basic types of insurance. You have term life and you have whole life. The only difference in those two to determine whether it is a term policy or a whole life policy is term insurance builds no cash value and whole life does. So when you're trying to determine whether it's a term product or a whole life product, Okay, the difference between term and whole life builds cash value, term does not. Term starts with a T, temporary / terminates. So all term is one day going to terminate. Our group term to 100 terminates at age 100. Even the one that pays up at 65, it's paid up at 65. No more premiums are due. But at age 100, the policy anniversary following their 100th birthday, it terminates. You know, all term will one day terminate. So when you're comparing term versus whole life builds cash, term does not. From there, term insurance is defined as pure insurance. So when you're on the test, it's asking you about term insurance, you know the definition of term is pure insurance because all it's doing, it doesn't have any non-forfeiture options. It's 100%. You pay a premium, we, cover for X amount of dollars. But it's not going to build any cash. It's going to one day terminate. You're just basically buying it for a term period. So while I'm talking about these, there was one more down here that I thought I pulled up here, but I don't see it. Did I not get the contestable and where did I have the variable? I thought I put variable up here a while ago. Conversion, revocable, irrevocable. This just means I'm going to have to save this under something else. Bear with me, guys. Let me do something here. What I wanted. Sorry about that. That's something I definitely wanted to be able to go over with y'all. This is big. We talked about variable earlier. Okay. Term versus whole life. Whole life goes cash, term does not. Term is temporary. It's going to terminate one day. Term insurance defined as pure insurance. Conversion. This is a privilege that's offered in term policies. Not all policies have them, but most of your individual owned term policies have a conversion option where you can convert it by a certain age. So like our term products that we offer through the individual market, if you buy a 10-year term, it's going to renew in 10 years. So it has a renewability option and it has a conversion options. Our policies have guaranteed renewable and guaranteed conversion. Not all companies are like that, but a renewal is just what it sounds like. The policy is going to renew. They're going to keep it in force. A conversion is when we convert it from a term to a whole life. Now it's converted at your attained age. So if I buy a term policy when I'm 30, I pay on it till I'm 50 and I'm like, man, I need to get some whole life. I can convert my term policy up to the face amount, no questions asked, to a whole life, but I have to pay a 50-year-old rate. I bought the term when I was 30, but it's based on my age that I converted. So if I converted it at 40, it would be a whole lot less expensive than waiting till 50 to convert it because now I'm 10 years older. So of course, life insurance, what determines your rate is your age, right? So age, the older you are, the more expensive it is. Now there's other factors, tobacco, non-tobacco, male and female. Of course, our group life doesn't have all that. It's just what's called a batch issue product. So it's strictly based on age, but most life products, of course, men don't have as long of a life expectancy as women. So typically a male will pay more than the same age female. At the same time, tobacco users have a higher risk. So they'll pay more than a non-tobacco user. So when you're looking at rates, again, the exposure to the company, somebody who by statistics is going to die sooner, they're going to charge more for because they're going to receive less premium from. So men die sooner, theirs is more expensive than women. Tobacco users die sooner, that's going to pay more than a non-tobacco user. It's not always the case, but based on the statistics, it is. So conversion, you convert it guaranteed, no questions asked. So again, I bought that policy when I was 30. When I was 40, I had a heart attack. Well, I can't qualify for something else. I can convert my term to a whole life, no questions asked. If you have a group term, not our group term. Now, y'all know our group term is something that's specially put together. They don't ever have to convert it because the price never goes up, coverage never comes down. Most group policies are going to go up when they get older. Coverage may come down. It could just outright terminate when their employment terminates. But most of your group term policies have to be converted within 31 days of the last day of employment. And that's something that the laws require. If there's a conversion privilege, you must give them 31 days to convert that policy to an individual plan if it has the option. So I talked a little bit about the difference in term and whole life. What was whole life? Whole life builds cash. But guys, term versus whole life is as complex as cars and trucks because you got 2 doors, 4 doors. Trucks, you got long wheelbase, short wheelbase, 4-wheel drive, 2-wheel drive. Even cars have got all-wheel drive, rear-wheel drive, front-wheel drive. You got, different size motors. I mean, dadgum, you can't just say I'm going to buy a car and everybody knows what you're getting, right? Same thing here. You can't say I'm going to buy a term policy and everybody knows because you got 10-year, 20-year, 30-year return of premium. You got a guaranteed renewable, not guaranteed renewable. You've got mortgage protection. You got annual terms. I mean, there's just only the policy binds the customer to the company. Whole life with us, our Career Life Plus and our whole life that's sold on the individual market, they are straight whole life. In other words, everything in the policy is guaranteed. When you buy a whole life from Liberty National, the price is guaranteed to never go up. The coverage is guaranteed to never come down. And it has some guaranteed non-forfeiture options. What's a non-forfeiture option? Well, a non-forfeiture option means you pay for this. And if you later decide to stop paying for it, you don't forfeit everything that was in the policy. For example, if I buy a whole life and it's building cash value and I pay on it for 10 years and I want to stop paying on it, I can get my cash out of it. That's called a cash surrender. So I can take my cash out. That's a non-forfeiture option. On a straight whole life, I can pay on it for 10 years and I can take a paid up policy. So I may buy a $50,000 whole life that's building cash in 10 years, 10,000 may be paid up. I can stop making payments and take a reduced paid up policy. So I no longer pay on it, but it's going to be there until my time of loss. I can put it on what's called extended term insurance. I can let the cash value in the policy. I can stop paying on it, but it'll take the cash out of the plan and actually turn around and pay that premium for as long as the cash lasts. So I can put it on extended term insurance, EI. And these are non-forfeiture options that are only found in a whole life product. Term life, remember, is pure insurance. So if you stop paying on term, it lapses. There's no non-forfeiture option in term insurance, only in whole life. Now, again, I talked about Liberty National's straight whole life where everything is guaranteed. Under conversion, I have 2 listed, and you need to understand these. You have a universal life and a variable life. Now, guys, both of these plans are whole life. Why are they whole life? Because they both have cash. But they are not, whatever your favorite car is or your favorite truck, like there's a lot of risks in both of these plans. As the term says, variable life. Remember we talked about earlier, variable products have a 45-day free look provision. Well, a variable life product, your cash is invested in the stock market. Anytime you see variable, it's based on stocks. So your variable life, that you have an investor. In order to sell a variable life, you and I can't sell it with a life accident and sickness license. I know it's a life product, but because it deals with the stock market, you have to have an investor's license, which is like a Series 6 or a Series 63. It seems like there's a 57 or a 50 something, but you got to have an investor's license to sell variable life. But you need to know what the variable life is because it is a whole life product because it does build cash, but the cash is invested in the stock market. And you and I both know stock market's not guaranteed. So if the stocks do good, it's a really, really, really good product. If the stocks do bad, it could be a really, really, really bad product. Universal life is different than a variable life. Variable life is invested in the stock market, and you have a financial advisor that does the investing for you. A universal life also has investments, but you don't have anybody that's doing the investing. The company is. So universal life is a term policy with a cash value side fund built into it. So what happens is, as you know, with most term products, as you get older, the price goes up. So I buy it today at 20, it's costing me $10 a month. When I'm 30, it's costing me $20 a month. When I'm 40, it's costing me $50 a month. When I'm 50, it's costing me 90. I mean, it just goes up, up, up. When I'm 70, that gum things cost me $400 a month, right? It goes up. Term goes up as you get older. Well, a universal life is a term product. So the price is going to go up, but it has cash value on the side. So from day one, you start building cash value. Why is that important? Well, if they ask you a question about a universal life, a straight whole life, a variable life, which one could you invest in and have money the first payment? A universal life is going to have payment the very first payment. Not going to have cash the very first payment. Variable life, it could, but it's based on investing, so it might not also. But from there, the universal life, it builds this cash value as a side fund. Well, when my insurance goes from 20 to 30, I might be paying 50 a month, but my insurance is only costing 20 a month. So that other 30 a month is going into my investment. So very first month, I got $30 in it, and it builds a little bit of interest. First year, I got $350, $400 in it. 10th year, I got $3,000 or $4,000 in it. But remember, the cost of my insurance goes up every year. So I buy it today at 20. Well, next year it might be $20.15. The next year it might be $20.40. I mean, well, instead of me paying more, well, remember, I'm already paying, $40 or $50 a month. Well, when it gets to 60, I'm still paying 50. They pull 10 out of my cash value fund. So I still pay 50 from now right on. But the scary part about it is, if it's not funded right up front, and I have this universal life and I live long enough, there is a risk that the cash value depletes. And if you deplete the cash value in a universal life policy, you have to start paying the term rate with whatever it is. If it's $300 a month now and your cash value's out, guess what? You're paying $300 a month. If it's $500 or $600, $700, guys, I've seen them $700 a month. Yes, you pay it. And you know what happens? Most people can't afford it. They drop it. So they've had this policy all these years. And if it's not funded right in the beginning, I'm not saying it's a bad product. I'm just saying it's got to be funded right in the beginning to ensure it doesn't run out when they're 80 or 90 years old. I always recommend it. Alice, Taylor will probably remember whenever I was in Richmond Hill a couple of weeks ago, I was mentioning to them about the universal life. And the universal life, I told them, if it's funded right in the beginning, it's going to be more expensive than our straight whole life that has all guarantees. So a lot of agents will go out there and they will cut the premium because there is some flexibility in it. Now, universal life also goes under the name flexible premium whole life and adjustable death benefit whole life. And from there, you just got to know those are universal lives. And if it's not a straight whole life like ours, it does have a risk to run out, but they are whole life. So they fall under the whole life category because they build cash. Okay. Before I go any further, I've talked a lot about these insurance and a lot of these terms. I'm going to open it up in case you have a question about anything that I can clarify real quick. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. What a teacher, man! Y'all ain't got no question. Hang on. Let me get back on the screen here with y'all. I'm on. Oh, can you? Oh, you can't see me. I stopped my video. What? There you go. I'm gonna pat myself on the back. Y'all see that? Pat myself on the back. Doing a good job of teaching. All right. Revocable and irrevocable. Again, guys, if you're pretty good with vocabulary words, you'll understand these. Revocable, you think about revoking something when your license is revoked, it's taken from you, or your driving privileges have been changed. A revocable beneficiary means it can be changed. The policy owner is the only one that can make changes on a policy. So when it asks you who controls the rights of the policy, it's not the insured. It's not the person making the premiums, the payor. The owner has all rights to make changes to the policy. They want to cash it in, the owner has to cash it in. They want to convert, they want to take advantage of some of the non-forfeiture options or the conversion options. Only the owner can make a change or take advantage of an option in a policy, all right? Only the owner. Those of you that do OPIs, option to purchase additional insurance, the owner has to sign for it, even if the insured is an adult. Even if the insured originally signed the app and turned the ownership over to somebody else, the owner has all rights. So I own a policy. I want to change the beneficiary to my daughter. I sign a form, I change the beneficiary. Later on, I get mad with her. I want to change it to my mom. I sign off as the owner. I actually own my daughter's policy. Well, when she gets married one day, she may come to me and say, Daddy, make my husband beneficiary. Well, guess what? I'm paying for it. I'm not. But I don't have the right because I pay for it. I have the right because I own it. Ownership is the only one that can make changes. However, an irrevocable beneficiary, the owner cannot change. Irrevocable means it cannot be revoked. It cannot. Irrevocable, kind of like something that's irreplaceable, like you can't replace it. Irrevocable is you cannot change it. The only person that can change an irrevocable beneficiary is that irrevocable beneficiary. So let's just say you owe me $10,000 and you got a life insurance policy and I want to be the irrevocable beneficiary. You're the owner, but you make me irrevocable beneficiary for that $10,000 policy that you owe me. And a lot of times, guys, banks will do this. People will buy life insurance to cover loans at banks. Banks will require it, and they will want to be named irrevocable beneficiary. The policy owner still pays it. They still have everything. And once they pay off the loan, the bank will release it by signing off on it. But if I'm the irrevocable beneficiary, and because you're the owner, 2 or 3 years later, you're like, shoot, I'm fixing to change it. I ain't paying Brian that money, and he ain't gonna get this insurance. Well, guess what? Because I'm the irrevocable, I'm the only one that can give approval for that. So if I don't sign off on it, it ain't being changed. So you got to know the difference. And that question is on your app about a revocable or an irrevocable. Policy owner has all the rights in a policy, except when it comes to irrevocable beneficiary. And because it's irrevocable, the only person that can make that change is that irrevocable beneficiary. These next two kind of go together, a representation and a warranty. A representation is a statement that's believed to be true. Height, weight, and health status is examples of representation. Now you go, yeah, but you know what your height and weight is. All right, well, I know about what it is, but I don't know exactly what it is, because see, a warranty is a statement of fact. Like my date of birth, like I don't know about what my birthday is. I know exactly whether I'm male or female. Now, this might be challenged in years to come, but right now it's your gender at birth. When you came out the womb, what we don't go there, but male, female, that is a warranty. If I'm taking certain prescription medication, that is a warranty. If I had a heart attack, that is a warranty. But if you ask, do you have cancer? Well, I can say I've never been diagnosed with cancer. That's a warranty, but it's a representation that I don't have cancer, because I pray to God I don't, but I'm saying I don't think I have cancer. And nobody has cancer until a doctor says you've got cancer. But guess what? They had it before they went to that doctor. The day before, the week before, the month before. Hey, there's been people that were diagnosed and they had it for years and didn't know it. So a representation, my health status is a representation, and they'll trick you on that. Representation is a statement that I think is true. Well, I don't think I have any issues with my heart. Well, I don't think I have diabetes. Well, I don't think I have a tumor. Well, I don't think, I think my height and weight is this. But a warranty is a statement of fact, date of birth, gender, and health issues that you've had in the past. Have you been diagnosed with? That's a yes, no, that's a warranty. Okay, whether you had a heart attack or not. Okay, so know the difference in representation and warranty. Misstatement of age. So sometimes you're buying a policy on your spouse or maybe a child. Sometimes you'll give your date of birth and might even give the wrong year, or the agent records the wrong year. either way, if there's a misstatement of age on a life insurance application, the death benefit will be adjusted to the face amount of the correct age. Now, if the correct age was younger, then the face amount will not be increased. We will refund the premium. So remember, this is based on the company's perspective. When I said a while ago about rates, you have to consider from the company's perspective. They're the ones that determines the rates, just like they are the ones that determine how misstatement of age is written in the contract. And the way it's written is, the older you get, the more expensive it is. So if I'm 35, but I give you my birthday wrong, and you listed it as 40, well, because I'm actually younger, it would have been less expensive. So whenever I pass and they go, oh, that birthday's 5 years off, they'll refund the difference of premiums. But the flip side of that, if I tell you I'm 35 when I'm really 40, well, I paid less for my coverage. So what they'll do is they'll take that 50,000, and based on what a 40-year-old would pay for it, somebody who's 5 years older, you might only get 47,000 or 45,000. So if there's a misstatement of age on the policy from a company's perspective, we will either reduce the face amount, or if the person was actually younger, we will refund the overpayment plus interest. So it's always going to be, to the company's advantage, because they're the ones that's exposed and at risk. All right. An endowment policy. Now, this is also a life plan that is fully matured at a certain age. So endowment kind of means it actually pays out. So you don't even have to be, you don't have to die for this policy to pay you. Years ago, they sold 20-year endowment, or a whole life that endowed at 65 or endowed at 70. And what that means is you can buy the life plan. I can buy that $10,000 policy. And if I die in the next, if I die between now and whatever endowment period there is, it's going to pay out the, full face amount. However, if I live, the endowment policy now becomes matured, which means the death benefit will pay me even before I pass. Now, once it pays out, the policy is over, right? So if I get to 65 and it pays, the endowment plan pays me my $10,000 at 65. If I die at 75, I better have that $10,000 sitting somewhere, because that policy ain't paying again. It's over. It did what it said it's going to do. But an endowment plan can only be a whole life plan because there has to be cash value in it. And it will mature based on a certain number of years or at a certain age. Again, I saw a lot of these 20 years ago. I couldn't tell you the last time I've seen an endowment policy being sold today. Now, I'm sure there's probably still some more laying around out there, but you just need to understand it for the state test. If they ask you about anything that is an endowment, it's based on it maturing and paying out a benefit even before death. The domiciles, this is on the different companies. What is their domicile? There's 3 different types: domestic, foreign, and alien. The way I remember this, guys, is just basically how far away it is. So domestic, local, right? Domesticated animal, that's in your backyard. Foreign, I look at like a foreign country across the ocean. Alien is outer space. It's a long ways off. From there, I break it down to domestic is headquartered within the state. So a Georgia domestic company would be headquartered in Georgia. For example, Aflac is domestic. Their home office is in Columbus, Georgia. Liberty National is a foreign company because we're headquartered in another state, but within the United States. So as long as you're in the United States, you are considered a foreign company. But Lloyd's of London, the farthest away, is alien. So alien is the farthest. It's somewhere outside the United States. It could be Canada, it could be Europe, it could be China, wherever it is. For the domicile, domestic, foreign, and alien, I look at what's the farthest away in state, in the United States, and then, of course, in another country. Okay. You got to know those. Mortality versus morbidity. Again, these go hand in hand. Mortality is used in life insurance. How do I remember that? Well, the immortal, right? Oh, I'm immortal, the superheroes or whatever. Mortal is life, like immortal, I can't be killed, right? So mortality, when they're figuring the probability of death, when they're figuring life insurance rates, they use the mortality rates. But then when they're figuring the health insurance rates for your comprehensive medical or even disability, they're using morbidity rates. And again, how do I remember that one? Well, you can be morbidly obese. Morbidly is in excess, but morbidity is for health or disability plans to determine the probability of somebody getting sick or becoming disabled. So mortality, life, morbidity, health. A binding receipt versus a conditional receipt. Know the difference in the both and if a claim will be paid. So a binding receipt binds the company. So if we have a life insurance product and they actually pay that first premium and the company binds the company, if something happens, then we're paying a claim. If it's a conditional receipt, then it will not pay until all conditions of the receipt are met. For example, like on our life plans, they have to get have a MVR pulled or something. Okay, well, it's conditional on them passing through that MVR. Or if we do a script check, it's conditional on them being cleared through the script check. So a binding receipt binds the company immediately. A conditional receipt is based on certain conditions being met. Licensed versus, that should be authorized. I apologize, little spelling error right there. Licensed versus authorized. Know the difference between the two of them, but the definition of both and the difference between the two of them. But licensed, you are licensed to do business. Even with your temp license, you're licensed to do business in the state of Georgia. But there are companies out there with your comprehensive medical companies, you can be authorized to serve customers under somebody else's license. So a lot of your PNC companies, your State Farms, Cotton States, All States, all those, they have an actual insurance office with a girl up front. Sometimes they're licensed, which means they can actually sell products. Sometimes they're authorized to act on behalf of the licensed agent. Just know the definition and know the difference. These next two, I have kind of a funny way of remembering these, but a per capita beneficiary and a per stirpes beneficiary. I don't know how many of y'all read per stirpes as per stripes, but that's kind of how I remember that one, but it is per stirpes as compared to per capita. So this on beneficiaries, when you have multiple beneficiaries, how does the beneficiary or how does the proceeds pay out if one of those beneficiaries deceases first? So my parents had 3 children, myself, a sister, and a brother. Let's say my dad named all 3 of us equal beneficiary on a $300,000 policy. Well, that means at his death, I would get $100,000. My sister would get $100,000. My brother would get $100,000, and we would all get it tax-free. Remember. So, if I died, then per capita says my brother and sister would now split the 300. They get 150 each. When I think of per capita, I think of caps. So I'm wearing a ball cap. My sister wearing a ball. Everybody who's got a ball cap on is going to get their fair share. If I died, now only my brother and sister have ball caps. So per capita is based on the people. And if me and my sister were to pass, my brother would get all 300,000. A per stirpes. Remember I said I use stripes as a way to remember this. Stripes, I'm looking at going up and down. So a stripe continues. So per stirpe says, if I was to pass, my 100 would go to my daughter Hannah. It would still go to me, but I had passed. This is going to go to my daughter, and it would still be paid out tax-free to her. My sister has 2 children. So if she passed, per stirpe says her 2 boys would split her 100,000. They would each get 50,000. And so per stirpes, if the primary beneficiary passes, then their heirs would receive that beneficiary's proceeds. But per capita says if a primary beneficiary passes, the remaining beneficiaries will split the proceeds amongst themselves. Okay. Family plan, family maintenance plan, family income plan. These are 3 different types of life insurance programs that are available. And you want to know the definition and the differences in the 3. The way I look at the family plan, it covers the entire family. So you're always going to have that primary benefit of that primary insured. So maybe we put the insurance on the husband and we put a spouse rider and a children's rider to cover the wife and the kids. But it's one plan that covers the entire family. A family maintenance plan is also one plan, but it's to help a family maintain. And it's a combination of term and whole life. And when I think of maintaining, I'm thinking of remaining level. I'm gonna pull my camera back up real quick just to show you this, give you a visual, because here's the way I see it. A family maintenance plan, the family's just maintaining, it's just steady Eddie, right? So because it's to maintain, it is a whole life and a level term, because I'm maintaining, I'm keeping things level. So a family plan covers everybody, but a family maintenance plan puts a whole life on me and a level term that at my death, my family would receive the proceeds so they can continue to maintain in my absence. Family income plan, I look at it that my need for income should change over time because every month I'm making a house payment. So my debt goes down. Every month I'm making a car payment. So the longer I live, if I live 5 years, my family's needs should be less in 5 years than it is today when I buy it. So because their need decreases over time, it's a whole life and a decreasing term. And they'll ask you what types of insurance are used for a family plan, which is a whole life with riders to cover their dependents. A family maintenance plan is a whole life with a level term to maintain. And a family income plan is a whole life with a decreasing term because the need for income should decrease over time. So it will be a decreasing term, okay? My video. All right, you just need to study those. Fiduciary, as I said earlier, we fall under the fiduciary division of the state of Georgia. We're not, quote unquote, in the insurance division. We fall under the insurance commissioner who falls under the fiduciary leg of the state. So because we deal with people's, financial security, we are defined in a position of financial trust, and we fall under the fiduciary division. Non-forfeiture options, I mentioned these earlier, but these are in whole life policies. They're only found in whole life, and some of them are the cash surrender I told you a while ago. So I may cancel my life insurance plan, but I haven't forfeited everything in it because I'm getting something back. Term, I pay it, I die and it pays, or I drop it and I get nothing. Whole life, I pay it, I die and it pays, or I can cancel it for some kind of a non-forfeiture option like cash surrender, extended term insurance, or even some kind of a reduced paid up insurance. But those are non-forfeiture options and only found in a whole life. COBRA, this goes to your health side, but COBRA stands for Consolidated Omnibus Budget Reconciliation Act. Now, is that on the test? I don't know, Rosa probably knows, but I can tell you COBRA is the more widely used term, and this is in health insurance. If you lose your group health, COBRA comes in to say, if your employment is terminated, regardless of how it works, regardless of why that happened, whether you quit or they fired you, COBRA says you're allowed to keep your medical insurance for up to 18 months after termination. So COBRA says 18 months, you're able to keep your health insurance. Now, here's the difference. Group health insurance, your employer has to pay a portion of your premium for it to be group. So if you keep it under COBRA, they're not required to pay anything. You have to foot the whole bill. So when you take it under COBRA, that's the reason the price goes up for you. It didn't go up. It's going up for you because you're paying the part that your employer originally was paying. Now, if your group health insurance ends because of death or divorce, or a child becomes legal age to have their own coverage, then these benefits can be extended for those survivors or that divorcee or child for up to another 36 months maximum. So it doubles for somebody who may have lost it through death or divorce. It gives them actually 36 months on that. And then if group health insurance is, you lose it because you go out on disability, OBRA, not COBRA. So know the difference. For disability, it's OBRA. OBRA allows your health insurance to continue through COBRA for 29 months. Now, the way I remember that is, remember, disability earlier. When do you become eligible for Social Security disability with Medicare? After 24 months. So you see here, they're kind of giving you that little cushion that if you become disabled, well, hopefully 2 years later, you got your SSI and you're now become eligible for underage Medicare and a supplement. But regardless, like, you can keep your health insurance through COBRA because of OBRA for 29 months. Parts of the policy, I already talked about this earlier. You got the coverage page, the declaration page, the benefit schedule, definitions. There's insuring clause. I mean, there's all these different parts of the policy. Guys, those things are on the test. Please, 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 please. I told you, this is just a little snapshot, little, cram course. You've got to dig into your material, look this stuff up, write it down. It will help you learn it. A rider, talked about that a little bit, but whenever I talked about the family plan, where you have the base policy and then you got a rider on top of it, an accidental death rider, a premium waiver rider, a children's rider, all of those are riding another plan. So it's defined as an additional premium paid for an additional benefit. And I just mentioned some of those. And they even have a hazardous hobby rider where you're paying additional, like I told you, that skydiving, whatever. So that could be rated, or they could put some kind of a rider on it. Buy-sell agreement, this is a lot of times through life insurance. So if you've got 3 business owners, if me, Alice, and Dolores all went into business together, we wanted a buy-sell agreement. Well, I would have a policy. I would be the beneficiary of a policy on Alice and Dolores. Alice would be the beneficiary of a policy on me and Dolores. Dolores would be a beneficiary of a policy on me and Alice. So there would be 6 policies issued that if one of them passed away, it would pay us a death benefit that we could in turn buy out that person's portion. So we may all carry, I may carry, 2 $1 million policies that at my death, $1 million is going to go to Dolores, $1 million is going to go to Alice. They would take those proceeds tax-free and buy out my wife or my children through a buy-sell agreement. So the money would come to my family. They would no longer have a say-so in the business, but they would have basically been bought out based on an agreed upon valuation of the business to buy out my third. So if I was covered for $1 million each, that means the business would have to be worth $6 million, because I would have 2 of it. Dolores would have 2 of it. You're a blank. Why did I do that? Alice. Why did I say? I was thinking April. Alice. For some reason, I want to say April. So Alice would have 2 million. Dolores would have 2 million, and I would have 2 million. I mean, the business was worth 6 million, but at my death, my family would be bought out of my $2 million part. That's a buy-sell agreement. Almost always sold with term insurance. Somebody that's got a lot of money will buy a whole life because there are some non-forfeiture options, but almost always bought with term insurance. Last little bit here. I know I'm running a little bit over, but we started a little bit over. So indemnity versus comprehensive medical. Our cancer policy, our intensive care policy, our accident policy, they're all indemnity plans. And what that means is we pay based on a schedule of benefits. So if it says it's going to pay $150 a day for every day you're in the hospital, or $500 a day for every day you're in the hospital, well, when you go into the hospital, if you're in there for 4 days, doesn't matter what the hospital charges, they're charging you $1,000 a day, we're paying $400, right? Now, the good news about that indemnity plan is hopefully you have a comprehensive medical plan to pick up the majority of it, and you're making money with your indemnity plan because it pays directly to you tax-free. But an indemnity plan based on a schedule benefit. So it's not based on the actual charge, it's based on what the policy says it's going to pay. Comprehensive medical, that's your Blue Cross and Blue Shield. That's your anything that's comprehensive medical, United, any of the comprehensive, I can't think of the other ones that are out there, but it's paid based on the actual charge. And most of those have an agreed upon amount they're going to pay. And so what happens is a lot of times you'll see the hospital charged you $1,200. The agreed amount might have been $800, and the comprehensive medical is going to pay the $8, and you don't owe the other $4 because they agreed on that amount. But indemnity pays based on a schedule of benefits in the policy. Comprehensive paid based on what is actually billed. So know the difference and how they actually work. All right. I've only got a little bit more. I'm gonna finish this, then I'll answer any question you may have. Annuities versus life insurance. One of the ways to remember this, an annuity is you're putting money in to protect against living too long. Life insurance, you're paying a premium to protect against dying too soon. Remember, the definition of life insurance is transference of risk. So I'm paying that premium to protect me against dying too soon. Whereas an annuity, I'm putting money in to protect me against living too long. So they're almost opposites, but you do need to know it's 2 sections down, but settlement options, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. Cease and desist. This is whenever a company is found to be doing something fraudulent in a state. Several years ago, we had a situation on licensing in Georgia. This is one of the reasons why it takes so long to get licensed in Georgia, because we would give an agent a license number before their license issued, but they could not sell because they didn't have a license. They could not solicit because they didn't have a license. But if I sold a product and you were present, I could assign it to you and it would go into escrow until your license issued. Well, when the state learned of that, they saw that as us paying commissions before they were licensed, and they found it to be illegal. And, you know, every other state allows it because we're not paying it. It's sitting in escrow. And listen, we've had people that didn't get licensed, maybe something came with their background. They did not get the money. We never pay it out, but the state of Georgia didn't like it. And they almost put us in a cease and desist. We ended up having to pay a fine and have an agreement that we would no longer issue agent numbers before their license is keyed in the state. So for those of you that are in, considering leadership, just know this, it's a good, 4-week process to get somebody applied and licensed in the state, but they almost put a cease and desist, and that would be, we would have to cease doing business immediately and pay a fine, and the minimum fine on that is $10,000, and it could be more. And mark my words, we paid a lot more than that. We got a pretty good slap on the wrist, and we had to agree to issue no more agent numbers until it is keyed in the state and updated on NIPR. So it's actually keys one day in the state, we can't even grab it till the next day. Settlement options is what I was talking about just a second ago. Know the difference in them, but some of your settlement options, and this could be for annuities. It can also be for life insurance proceeds. So you can receive the benefits lump sum, where you just basically get, hey, if it's 100,000, I get 100,000. I can do a fixed period income. Well, that's exactly what it says. I can get it for a certain period. I can do a 1 year where I get equal payments for 12 months. I can do for 10 years where I get equal payments every month for 10 years, and do a 20-year. But remember, the longer you stretch it out, the less your per month is. Always think about it from the company's perspective. So when you start talking about, hey, if Sally wanted to get her life insurance paid out in a settlement option, which one would have the largest monthly payment? A fixed amount income, a fixed period 10-year income, a fixed period 20-year income, or a fixed period 30-year income? Well, the largest amount would be on the 10-year because they're paying it out in a much shorter term, right? Here's the other thing. Life insurance is still not taxable, even under a settlement option, but the interest is. And if you leave the money with a company and you have it pay out in a fixed period or fixed income, the death benefit is tax-free, but the interest is taxable. You'll always pay interest on taxable, on interest. You'll always pay taxes, I'm sorry. You'll always pay taxes on interest and any kind of growth inside of like a 401k or whatever. So you have fixed period, fixed amount is you say, hey, I want to draw $1,000 a month until it runs out. I want to draw 2,000 a month until it runs out. You're going to get that amount until it runs out. And then a joint and last survivor. So we could do a fixed period with a joint and last survivor. And remember, the more exposure to the company, the less they're going to pay. So if I do a fixed period 10-year, let's say it's going to be $1,000 a month. But if I'm married and I do a fixed period 10-year, joint and last survivor, so it's going to pay a minimum of 10 years, but it will also pay until my survivor passes, not just one, but we both passed. Well, now they're having to cover 2 lives. Well, they're not going to pay $1,000 more, they're going to pay 800 or 700, just depending on the exposure to the company. They can figure out what a fixed period joint and last survivor, and it just says you'll continue to receive a benefit until the last survivor passes. Those are settlement options. Principal sum versus capital sum. Principal sum is the amount of the claim. Capital sum is the total of the claim. What does that mean? Well, if I take that $100,000 in lump sum, my principal sum is $100,000. My capital sum is $100,000. But if I take the $100,000 paid out over the next 12 months, they may wind up paying me $4,000 for the interest. My principal sum is still 100, but my capital is 104,000 because it's the total of everything paid out. HMO versus PPO. This goes back to health insurance again. HMO is a health maintenance organization. PPO is a preferred provider organization. HMO, you have very little choices in an HMO. You basically pick a doctor, you pick a hospital that's in their HMO network that's in your area, and you have to follow their HMO protocol, and they want you to do checkups, all these other things. There are some advantages to an HMO, but guys, it is really, really, really limited. A PPO costs more, but it gives you a lot more options. So when you have a PPO plan, doesn't matter whether I get seen in Jacksonville or if I'm up in Savannah, I can go to a PPO doctor in Savannah. My HMO, I have to see my doctors in my home area in Jacksonville. And if I go outside of an area, the only way I can see them is to pay them outside of the network, which means it comes out of my pocket, or it has to be a life-threatening emergency for them to be able to give me care to be covered under my HMO. But a PPO, as long as I go to a preferred provider, it's going to be covered, same benefit in Jacksonville, in California, in New York, as long as they're in my network of PPO providers. So Blue Cross is real big with your PPO. I don't know who some of your HMO companies are, but you just got to know the difference. You don't necessarily have to know the company, you got to know the difference. And the last thing on here, and I'm going to open it up for questions. Purchase of insurance, know the process. I mentioned this earlier about the application is the applicant offering to do business with the company. It's an offer and acceptance. The company can either accept it or counter offer it if the insured is considered a higher risk. And then they have the option to accept it or deny it from there. But purchasing insurance is an offer and acceptance process, and it's always the applicant offering first to the company, hey, I want this coverage for this amount, and they either accept it or counter offer it, and then the insured has the option to accept it or deny it. Okay. Now, guys, this again was just a small amount. I do want to give you one more test taking tip as I am trying to get my video back on here. One more test taking tip for you is, how do I make this? Stop sharing. How about that? That'll make it bigger. All right. One more test taking tip for those of you that are in the course. So I mentioned to you about the passing ratio. I mentioned to you how to take this test. That 4-step process, the first thing on your page. When you're taking your practice test, I know this is a lot of writing, but if you want to pass it, one and done, right? Every one that you miss, take a picture with your phone. I don't care about you writing it, getting writer's cramp. Take a picture of every wrong answer. Go back into your material, find it, and write down what you find. So if there's 200 questions and you miss 40 of them, take a picture of those 40, go back into your material, find where those 40 are, because here's what happens. You'll find those 40, and you'll find 40 more when you're looking for them. I promise you, you will. Now, there's over 2,000 questions on this that they can pull from on this test. So Just because you remember the ones that was on it the last time doesn't mean it's going to be the same ones on it the next time. They pull from a bank of questions. So when you go in to find the 40 you missed, find 40 more. You need those 80 because some of those other 40 are going to be on those 135 that you have when you take it again, okay? So take that practice test. Any of your quizzes, take a picture of it, go back in and find it. And when you go back in and find it, write down what you find about it. And then you've got like a log to read to kind of put it in your memory bank before you go back and take the test again. Writing it also helps you learn it. Studying it helps you find two answers. So you're learning by reading, you're learning by writing, you're learning by digging, researching, you're pulling two, and it will increase your probability to pass the test. All right. Besides that, I'm gonna go top left. I'm gonna work my way around. Dolores, you're the first one that I see. I'll let you unmute. Do you have any question about anything that I went over? No questions. I don't hear you. You're still muted. So no questions. You're good. Thumbs up. Okay. Rose, I'll let you unmute. You're next in line. Do you have any question, anything that I can answer, clarify? From your test, you're muted right now.
No, sir. I think I got everything.
Okay. Lantrell, you're next. Anything that I could answer for you? Any question you may have?
No, sir. I think I'm good.
Larry?
No, sir, but thank you for offering this.
Yeah, man. Ahmed?
No, sir, I got everything. Thank you so much.
Good. Well, guys, thank you for taking time. I know it's been long, about 2 hours here. I hope it was profitable to you. Again, this is just to help end the test, dive into that Excel course, take those practice tests, take those pictures, dive back in it to find those answers, and let's all pass it, all right? Appreciate you taking time. Y'all have a great day.
Thank you.
You too.
Thank you.